This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, can you all see my screen? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about one of the important topics. So that's basically about how to write down the requirements in the form of use cases. What are use cases? And like we need to look at the format and what exactly that we write in a use case. So when you talk about use case, in simplest form, a use case is it's a way to write down the requirements in a detailed format. A use case specifies the behavior of a system or a part of a system and is a description of set of sequence of actions that the user performs to see the observable behavior. A use case specifies the behavior of a system or a part of a system and is a description of set of sequence of actions. So it talks about the set of sequence of actions that the user performs to see the observable behavior. The user performs to see the observable behavior. So that we call it as a use case. So when we talk about a use case, so as I mentioned, it has a particular format or a template. Now, if you look at here, you have the name, you have the actors, you have the trigger, you have the precondition, we have the post condition, and the success scenario, and alternative flows. Name, actors, trigger, precondition, post condition, success scenario, and the alternative flows. So what does name suggest? What does name suggest? So the name suggests the name of the requirement. The name suggests the name of the requirement. So it talks about what is the requirement that we are handling here. What is the name of the requirement that we are handling here? So for example, so if the requirement is to add the beneficiary and for a internet banking system, right? Adding of the beneficiary. So we put the name as adding the beneficiary to the particular savings account. Adding the user should be able to add the beneficiary. That is how you put the name of the requirement. Then who are the actors? So the actors are the people, are the systems which are going to interact in this particular requirement. So obviously, who would be adding the beneficiary? The bank customer would be adding the beneficiary. The bank customer would be adding the beneficiary. So in that case, the actor who is going to act on the system with regards to particular requirement, he would be the bank customer if it is regards to adding the beneficiary. And for example, so if you are like generating the DD by accepting the deposit, if they need to generate the DD, so in that case, obviously DD generation you can't do it, I can't do it. So the people who are working in the bank employees, the personal banker, or maybe the person who is sitting in the cash desk, they will be able to generate the DD. So for them, like if you are talking about generating the DD, so the actor would be the bank employee or the personal banker. So that is how the actor would vary depending upon the requirement. So depending upon the requirement, the actor who is going to act on the system would vary. Then we talk about the trigger. So trigger would be the starting point for the use case. So that means what triggers the use case, or what would be the starting point for the use case, or what initiate the use case. Customer reporting a claim, so which would initiate the claim processes. Customer inserting a card into the ATM machine, so which will initiate cash withdrawal or balance inquiry or checking the mini statement or whatever. So this is the trigger for doing a number of actions, maybe like any of these things: customer inserting a card into the ATM machine, customer reporting a claim, so which would be initiating the claim process, So this is an example of the trigger and the precondition. So the precondition would be what should be the condition of the system before running the use case. So that means that, for example, for running a use case, you have something like a prerequisite. So what would be the prerequisite? For example, you have mentioned that the valid user should be able to log into the system. So that is what the requirement you mentioned. In that case, so what should be the condition of the system before running the use case? So obviously there should be the user account should be existing, user has enough money in their account. So the prerequisite is that user should be having valid account credentials. Only then you should be able to do the transaction. So if you have to transfer the fund, user should be having enough money in their account. Only then they should be able to transfer funds to a different account. If you want to like save the file, there should be enough disk space. So only then you should be able to save the file to the hard disk. So that's how, when we talk about the precondition, what should be the condition of the system before running the use case? Before running the use case, the examples would be like the user account should be there with valid account. User should be having enough money to transact. In case if your requirement is to transfer the funds, there should be enough balance in your account. If your requirement is to save the file, the requirement that you are addressing is to save the file, there should be enough disk space to save the file. So that's what we call it as the precondition or prerequisite. Then we have the post condition. So the post condition is after doing all the steps under the use case, what is the expected behavior? What would be the expected behavior after doing all the steps mentioned in the use case? The post condition is the outcome of the use case. That means that how do you want the system to respond after doing a set of actions? Maybe there are 5 steps or maybe 10 steps. After doing 1 to 10 steps, what is the outcome that you want to see? That would go under the post condition. The post condition is the outcome of the use case. The examples of the post condition: if you are trying to transfer the funds, the money should be transferred to the user account successfully. If you are trying to log in, user should be able to log into the system successfully. If you are trying to save the file should be saved to the hard disk. The final expectation is that the file should be saved to the hard disk. So that is generally the post condition. There are some cases where you may not see the actual outcome. In that case, you may see the minimal guarantee case. What is minimal guarantee case? The minimal things a system can promise, holding even when the use case execution ended in failure. So if you are trying to transfer the funds, so that will be like money is not transferred unless authorization is granted by the user. For example, in a use case, there are 10 steps, 10 sequence of events that we need to do, and out of which, like maybe some of the things are not yet developed in the system. Like maybe step 9 and 10, or maybe 9 is not yet implemented, like an approval process or authorization process. If it is not yet developed, you can't expect the system to authorize the transaction, right? So you can't expect the system to facilitate authorization process. So in that case, at this point of time, the use case will work from step 1 to step 8. Step 9 and 10 will not be successful. So that we know, that is a known limitation, right? So at this point of time, the authorization process is not implemented, not developed, which cannot work. So obviously step 1 to 8 only should be successful. So that kind of situation, we call it as minimal guarantee situation or minimal guarantee case. The minimal things a system can promise holding even when the use case execution ended in failure. Whole use case is a failure. The reason being ninth and 10th steps are not successfully done, but we know that limitation and we expect minimum expectation is that step 1 to 8 should be successful. So that is when we define the post condition as a minimal guarantee condition, that the system should be like taking you to this particular screen for the authorization process. So that is kind of an example for a minimal guarantee case. Then success guarantee case, obviously if you are successfully doing the transaction, whatever is defined under the use case, what is the expected outcome? If you're trying to save the file should be saved. If you're trying to transfer the funds, money should be transferred to the user account. So that way, you see the post condition, you have basically, like these are the examples of the post condition. Is it clear so far? Guys, everyone, is it clear or any questions?
So I just have one question regarding the minimal guarantee. So this is
Mm-hmm.
the thing, authorization. Authorization is the obvious part, right? For a money transfer thing, when we do the testing, when we do the processing, the authorization part is obvious. That is obvious. So I'm not getting it actually. How can it be the
Okay.
minimal thing?
Okay. So this is just one example. So authorization in the sense, so what kind of authorization? If you're transferring your money from your account to someone's account, what kind of authorization would be involved? If you are trying to transfer $1,000 to someone's account, do you
Yeah.
take the authorization from someone?
So I need, obviously, if I try to transfer money, I need to authorize the mobile number and other details of mine. So the bank
Mm-hmm.
try to authorize those details from me.
Already
After
your
then they will.
details, yeah, already all your details will be with the bank. You logged into your bank system and you try to do the transaction. You want to try transferring some amount of money. So you don't need an
Yeah. They're
authorization.
also
But
ask for the OPD, right? They will send a OPD to my mobile, and I
the
have to
OTP
enter
that
the
you,
OPD.
okay, so here, so this authorization may be slightly different. So the reason being, what I'm saying is, for example, this is just an example. First thing, that this is an example. And second, like let's say I'm giving an example of, you need to do 10 steps in a transaction for doing a transaction as a successful one. For example, just giving, out of 10 steps, the system is developed, like this ninth and 10th steps are not yet developed. Okay, so it is not yet developed, it is not yet implemented. So you can't expect these things to work now. Okay, but what is your expectation until this point of time? Sorry, until step 8 should be successful. Okay, if you look at the whole use case, it's a failure. The reason being, these steps are not successful. But this is a known limitation, so we are not going to deliver it to the customer at this point of time. We are not going to deliver it, but at this point of time, whatever the feature that we are developing, that feature will work only to this extent. Maybe in next release cycle we will develop this ninth and 10th steps, but for now the expectation or the post condition is that it should only work up till point 8. That is the meaning of it. It is just an example. Okay, so don't take it as a like we deliver the software with this feature. It is not the case. Don't take it that way. So I'm taking,
Okay.
so just that in case if your like use case have some sequence of steps, and if you know that there is a known limitation that all the steps cannot be possible for reasons being not developed, for reasons being it is not working. For example, ninth and 10th steps are related to some downstream system which has to respond to you. For example, at this point of time, downstream system is not available, like during this development activity and all, there is no connectivity. So that means that in that case, you can't expect this ninth and steps to be successful. So in that case, what is your expectation? Yes, till step 8 should be working. If it is working fine, I will say this use case is working as expected at this point of time. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. Right, don't take it that we deliver the software. It is not that. So in a use case for a particular requirement, what would be the post condition after doing XYZ steps? What is the expected post condition? But the expectation may not be possible every time. The reason being there are known limitations. When there are known limitations, we define it as a minimal guarantee case. Minimal things what you can expect from the system. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. All
Uh,
right. So moving on to, sorry.
uh,
Yes, please.
I have a question. What's the difference between the user case and user stories, or are they same?
No, these are not the same. So, but these two are similar in the sense that these two are the way of writing down the requirement. It's a way to write down the requirement. In that way, it is similar. If you are using use case or if you're using user story, it is all about putting down the requirements in a detailed format. Okay. So use case follows a particular format, user story follows a particular format. So how does user story follows? The other day when I'm taking you through the requirement documentation, especially the BRD document, I have shown you what does user story could consist of. Story ID, the priority, and what is the story title, the user story title, and the user story description, and you have the acceptance criteria. So that follows a particular format. Use case follows a different format, as I am mentioning here. Is that clear?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And one other thing is, if you are following agile development methodologies as part of your project, generally you define in the form of a user story. So, but that doesn't mean that your requirement is different. It is works the same way, but the way you write down the requirement in a particular format, that would vary if you are following agile methodology or a generic methodology, or you can simply put it in a simple textual way. No one will basically object that you, if you are writing in a simple textual way without any formatting and stuff, no one will basically object you. But the problem is, if you are following the same and your team members or the BAs should be following the same, and your team has to come to an agreement that okay, we are fine with the textual format. Okay, in that case there should not be any problem whether you write it in a use case format or user story format or simple textual format. Anything should be fine. Is that clear?
Yeah, good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, that means that whether you follow user story or use case or the other simple textual format, the objective is the same, the requirement is the same. You are not going to change the requirement. The way that you are defining, the template is going to change. The template is going to change, except that template. So the way the behavior of the system or the requirement is not going to change, whether you follow use case or a user story, it is not going to change that way. Okay,
Yeah, okay.
right. So coming to the success scenario, so this is the main storyline of the use case. It is written under the assumption that everything is okay, no errors or problems occur, and it leads directly to the desired outcome of the use case. It is composed of sequence of action steps. So when you talk about the success scenario, it is composed of sequence of action steps. It is composed of sequence of action steps. So it is written under the assumption that everything is okay, no errors or problems occur in the workflow, and every step leads to the next step, and it leads directly to the desired outcome of the use case. Now coming to the success scenario example, how do you write the success scenario? So here we are putting down one particular requirement. So the name of the requirement is that the user should be able to add a product to the shopping cart. You can put it as user should be able to add a product to the shopping cart. That is the requirement. What is the precondition? The system is already launched. The system is already launched. So the precondition is that the system is already there, up and running. And when you talk about the success scenario, so these are all the steps that we need to do. In order for the user to add a product to the shopping cart in an online shopping portal, what are all the steps that we should be doing? User enters a keyword and click on search. So I need a washing machine. So what do? I launch the application and enters a keyword and click on search. So what should happen? What should be the system response in that regard? User's action. UA stands for user's action. User does this one. And how the system should respond to this step? The system should be presenting a set of search results and sponsored products, all of which includes the name, short description, and the price. All of which includes the name, short description, and the price. So user selects a product or double click on a product. So that is again the user's action. What should be the system response? The system displays a product page including product information, reviews, and related products. System displays the product page including product information, reviews, and related products. The system should be displaying the product page including product information, reviews, and related products. User click on add product to the shopping cart. Another user's action is user adds the product to the shopping cart. User adds the product to the shopping cart. So what should be the system response? The product should be get added to the, this is again the system response, that should be the post condition. Product should be get added to the shopping cart, and when you go to the shopping cart you should be able to see the product. So that means that if you look at the alternative steps, step 1 is user's action, step 2 is the system response. Who defined this system response? The BA defined this system response. And again user's action, so user should do this one. So again the system has to respond this way. Who defines this one? The BA has defined. So once the products are added, the product should be added to the shopping cart. Who defined this behavior? The BA defined this behavior. So obviously the user will do the steps as suggested, and the system has to be developed in such a way that for the user's action, the system has to respond like this. The system has to respond like this. Ultimately, the objective is that the user should be able to add a product to the shopping cart. So that's why your name of the requirement, your post condition should be, your post condition is the outcome of the your objective of adding the product to the shopping cart. Your post condition should be in line with it. So that is the meaning of it. Is that clear?
Yes.
Others, is it clear? So this is what we should be doing. Overall, we as a BA, the expectation is that when you drill down the things and when you detail the information, we detail to an extent, possible extent, and make sure that you put it in this particular format and put it in like a user's action and system response format. So ultimately, for every feature, you should be writing down the use cases, something like this, or use cases or user stories, so that the developer who is going to develop the system, they make sure they develop these things. 2, 4, and 6. These are users actions. 1, 3, and 5 are users actions. However you inform them, the user will use the system the same way. And user is an informed person, like they will basically, based on your suggestion, they will act on the system. But system has to be developed in such a way that it should respond like this. So we define these things, and accordingly the developer make sure they develop the system in this particular manner. Is it clear?
Yes.
I want everyone's response here. So these are the important things. These are not like the other ones that we discussed so far. So everything is basically important, but when it comes to writing down the requirement, this is the whole and sole purpose of the BA role. That's the reason why I am emphasizing.
Yes.
Others?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So I'm not hearing some few people at all. Some reason I don't know whether they are clear, they like they have questions or anything. So I'm not like hearing their responses at all. But anyway, so it's up to you. Okay, all right. So moving on to now we talked about the success scenario example. So next we talk about the guideline for effective writing. Use simple grammar always. It should be when you are writing down the requirement, very much straightforward approach in a simplistic manner. Only one side is doing something in a single step. Now, if you see the steps here, either user is acting on the system or system is responding to user's actions. Okay, but we are not clubbing both. Most important thing is we are not clubbing both the things. Only one side is doing something in a single step. Right from an objective point of view, every step should be having some objective. Get the amount from the user and give him the money. Don't write it this way. There should be an objective. Actor would click on withdrawal. System would ask for the amount. Actor enters the amount. The system would like produce the money. That's how each of the things we need to break down like into the steps. Any step should lead to some progress. Any step should lead to some progress. User click on the enter key. So by entering the clicking on the enter key, so system status is not going to change, then we don't call it as a separate step. If you're doing certain action, the system is responding. So in that case, the system is responding or changing the status. That is when you can say that is another step in your use case. If the system is in the same screen, it is not going to change anything. There is no point of mentioning that as a separate step. So that is why any step should lead to some progress. Okay, leave about complex diagram. No system, no actor. So if you're not defining the actor, so that's not the right way of doing it. Too many UI details, too many user interface details, too many user interface details. User types ID and password, clicks OK or hits enter. User types ID and password, clicks OK or hits enter. So that way, so you don't need to put it this much of information. Rather, you can put it as user enters the credentials and click on submit. That's it. Credentials, that means user ID and password. Very low goal details. So which means that if you are putting step 1 as user provides the name, step 2 as user provides the address, step 3 as user provides the telephone number. By entering the name, address, telephone number, nothing is going to change. When the system status will change, the moment you enter all the details and click on submit, only then the status will change. By entering the name, address and telephone number, only then the system status will change. Name, address and telephone number, only then if you click on submit, the status will change. Rather, you can put it this particular step as this way. User enters all the details like name, address and telephone number and submit. Name, address and telephone number and submit. So if they put this detail in this way, then obviously you'll see like you can put it under one particular step, and that is going to change the status of the system the moment you click on submit. Or you can write it as user enters the details below and submit. The details like the name, address, telephone number, whatever. You can mention all of those stuff. Is that clear?
Yes.
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 Okay. All right. So coming to the last one out of the use case is the alternative flows. So in the success scenario, we are assuming that every step lead to next step. Every step should be successful, would be successful. But is it the case in reality? There will be a number of issues and the system may not respond accordingly. So in such case, where do we define that behavior? So we should be defining under the alternative flows. For example, any network error occurred in between. Don't worry about steps 4 to 7. Those are random numbers. In case there are 7 steps, if there is any network issue occurred between 4 to 7, how the system has to respond. 404 bad gateway found, or like our no network connection, or what is the kind of error that the system should show. So that is defined under the errors. Unusual or rare case scenarios. Credit card is defined as stolen. Sometimes you see unusual errors. How do you want the system to respond for unusual cases? And endpoint. Sometimes the system takes no more open steps to go forward. It is a kind of deadlock. Either you cannot go forward, there is no button for it, or you cannot come back. There is no button or link to come back. So how the system has to respond. And shortcuts. The user can leave the use case by clicking on the escape key. After doing 3 or 4 steps, the moment you click on escape, the system will ask you, do you really want to leave this page? Okay or cancel. So that is the kind of behavior that the BA has defined to the system, so that you are getting a pop-up message. The system is asking you whether you want to really leave this page, because you did like 4 or 5 steps and you're all of a sudden you clicked on escape. So do you really want to leave this page? Okay or cancel. The moment you click on OK, you will be moving back to the previous page or some other page. But if you click on cancel, you will stay back in the same page. So that is how the alternative flows has to be defined. If the system is not working, any errors, or maybe there may be other additional buttons. So in that case, so how the system would respond if the user clicks on the additional buttons. If the user clicks on the additional button, that would be defined under the alternative flows. That would be defined under the alternative flows. Is that clear?
Yes.
Any? Okay. All right, so that's about the use cases. The use case, as I mentioned, it's in a particular format where we talk about the name of the requirement, the actor or the actors who are going to interact with the system, and then you have the trigger, precondition, the post condition, and success scenario, and the alternative flows. So this is the format or the template that we use for creating the use case. Then we will talk about, so these things already like we spoke about. So name is the name of the requirement, actor is the person or the system who are going to interact with the system, trigger is the starting point for the use case, precondition is the system condition before running the use case, and post condition is the system condition after running the use case, and success scenario is the what are the steps that should be done to successfully achieve whatever we defined in the requirement name or title. The alternative flows, if there is like some issue, if it is not working, what should be the system behavior, that is defined under the alternative flows. So that's about the use case, and followed by that we have something called as the use case diagrams. Before we start use case diagrams, we will talk about something called as UML diagrams. So UML stands for Unified Modeling Language. UML stands for Unified Modeling Language, diagrammatic language used in software development activity. Like there are set of diagrams that we use in the software development activity. So UML stands for Unified Modeling Language, that is used for specifying, visualizing, constructing, and documenting the elements of software and even non-software systems. In the year 1997, the Object Management Group has developed the Unified Modeling Language as a common architectural framework for modeling object-oriented systems and applications. The systems which are developed on object-oriented methodologies like C++, Java, .NET, VB, so which are developed using object-oriented modeling language. So for these systems, these UML diagrams are going to be quite helpful. Unified Modeling Language. So at this point of time, there are in total 13 diagrams. Earlier, there were 9 diagrams only, but in 2013 the new version has released. In total under UML there are 13 diagrams. We are not going to worry about all of them because most of the diagrams are sensible for the developer role, not for the business analyst. So we talk about the purpose of this UML. So it helps in visualization. Since these are the diagrams, the graphical nature of the UML allows the visualization of the systems before they are implemented. Specification: UML can be used for specifying what is required of a system and how a system may be implemented. It captures all the important requirements, analysis, design decisions that needs to be established during the system development lifecycle. UML helps in specification of the requirement, can be used for specifying what is required of a system, how a system may be implemented. It captures all the important requirements, analysis, design decisions that needs to be established during the system development lifecycle. So it helps in documenting the requirements in some way diagrammatic manner. So now we talk about the construction. UML can be used to guide and craft the implementation of complicated systems. If you are developing the complicated applications, UML helps in construction of the things, complicated systems. And documenting, UML offers a means of capturing the knowledge and documenting the deliverables, such as requirement document, functional specs, and test plan documentation. These are all critical in controlling, measuring, communicating the systems throughout its life cycle. These are all critical in controlling, measuring, and communicating the systems throughout its life cycle. That way, UML is basically stand for Unified Modeling Language. It's used for visualization, specification, construction, and documenting of the requirements which are used for the software development activity. So when we talk about UML diagrams, so there are 4 major diagrams which we are going to talk about, out of which not all the 4 diagrams are important for us, but anyway, these 2 diagrams are for the BA role: use case diagram and activity diagram. Class and sequence diagram are more for the development team since these are widely used. So we need to know the way how we interpret the diagram. We don't need to create the class diagram and sequence diagram. We should know how to interpret that diagram. Use case diagram and activity diagram is for the BA role. So we should be able to create the use case and activity diagram as needed. Now, first thing we will talk about the use case diagram. Just give me a moment. So the use case diagram,
Kiran,
though we talk, sorry, yes, please.
yeah, so in UML, you said that even in non-software system, it's used.
Okay, that's
So
not
what does
required
that
for
mean?
us. Non-software systems is basically when you talk about the activity diagram. When you talk about some of the diagrams, it may be used for non-software application, because activity diagram in the simplest way, it is a flow chart, slightly modified version of flow chart. And if you talk about flow chart, it is not only used for software development activity, right? Flow chart is used for process flow diagrams, data flow, different diagrams. So you use flow chart to define the workflow from one system to other system, one process to other process. So that way, not necessary that all the diagrams are used for development activity, software development of the thing. For non-software applications also, these can be used, but we don't need to worry about it as long as we to deal with the software applications. Okay. Right. So when we talk about the use case diagram, so since we are continuing with use case and use case diagram, don't at all get confused that use case and use case diagrams are in continuation, or maybe we are more related. No, it's not that way. So use case diagrams are part of UML. Use case diagrams are part of UML. So the use case diagram slightly may be using the some of the things are part of the use case, but use case and use case diagrams are not very much the same, are related, or maybe connected very much. So when you talk about the use case diagram, it's a graphic depiction of interaction among the elements of the system. Graphically, it shows the interactions among the elements of a system. Use cases represent the system functionality, the requirements of the system from the user's perspective. The use case represents the system functionality, the requirements of the system from the user's perspective. Now, when you talk about the use case, like if you look at here, the use case, you have the actor is a human being or any other system, and the use case in diagram. So the use case and the use case in scripting, like this is called as the complete diagram. We call it as the use case model. A use case is a contract of interaction between the system and an actor. A full use case model consists of a diagram describing the relations between the use cases and actors. So this is actor and this is a use case. Use case is nothing but the purpose for which the user would be using the system, the purpose. And a document describing the use case in detail. So this all thing we call it as the use case model. This complete thing we call it as the use case model. So which consists of the use case diagram and a use case in detail and a use case in detail. This complete thing we call it as the use case model. Then moving on to the notations that we use, the use case. So use case defines a description of set of sequence of actions. So use case obviously like as we discussed, but here the use case is more like the purpose for which we would be using the system, and which is represented in ellipse or the oval. Ellipse or the oval represent the use case in the use case diagram. The actor, so the people are the systems that provide or receive information from the system. They're among the stakeholders of the system. They're among the stakeholders of the system. Association, the lines connecting the use case and actors to one another. This is called as the association line. The use case and actors to one another, that is called as the association. So when we talk about the other notations, there are two other notations which are called as the include and extend notation. Include and extend notation. So when we talk about include and extend notation, include specifies that the source use case explicitly incorporate the behavior of another use case. The source explicitly incorporate the behavior of another use case at a location specified by the source. At a location specified by the source. So that is when we call it as include. Use case 1 includes another use case. That is when you call it as include. Use case 1 includes use case 2. I'll give you an example. So when we want to log into the system, for example, your use case 1 is login activity. In order to log in, you enter your username and password. Username and password, and you click on submit. And the moment you click on login, what will happen? Your username and password would be validated with the system. So that means that the validation will happen. Can it be possible that without validation, your login is successful? Without validating your data, your username and password in the database, is it possible to log into the system?
No.
Without validating your username and password, if you are able to log in, then what is the point of creating a username and strict password? Right? So you every time you log into the system, any system you take, your username and password are validated in the database. Only then your login would be successful. So that means that your login activity includes validation, without which you cannot do your login. So that's when you use this kind of representation. Login includes validation. Maybe you see that you just the login, you don't include validation, you don't mention it, that's fine. But if you have to mention clearly, your login without the validation cannot be possible at all. So include the other representation is, you can represent like this also. Your login includes your validation. Okay. Your validation is a subset of your login activity without which your login cannot be successful. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Right, moving on to the extend. So specifies that the target use case extends the behavior of the source. It is extension of the behavior of the source. So you have one source use case, you have like extension. The extended use case that we represent with the extend notation. You represent that with the extend notation. Extend specifies that the target use case extends the behavior of the source. Extends the behavior of the source. So how do we define this one, extend? Now, when we talk about extend, for example, you go to a restaurant and you ask for a food menu or you ask for a menu. The waiter over there gets two menus. One is for the food and the other one is for the drinks. Did you ask for the drinks menu? No. Why did they give you? They're saying that we are also serving drinks. This is an extended service, or maybe like we are also providing the additional service out here. So just as an information, we are giving this, like whatever. If you would like to have drinks, you can have a look at the like menu. This is the menu for the same. So similarly, I would give you a system example. So the one that I have given right now is a real-time one. I mean, like a realistic, like so when we go to a restaurant, so this is how we can say. But in like system perspective, if you're trying to book the flight ticket, you enter, so you open some website and you enter all the detail like source, destination, date of travel, time of travel. You entered all the details and click on search. What will you see after entering all the details and click on search? Source, destination, date of travel, and then number of people, class of travel. You enter all the details and click on search. What will happen? So what do you see on the screen?
It will
The
show
next
all
screen,
the flight details.
you show the flight details. Okay.
Also some before or after date flight details as well.
Yes, that also like before and after date. If it is a midnight one, that if you choose, so the next day flights are previous day things. So just as an information, so it will show the list of flights. Okay. Apart from that,
It will show filters like
It
if you want
shows
to.
filters. Okay.
Some other ads are shown
it
also,
shows person.
like there's some hotel booking and all.
Yeah.
Okay. The list of hotels.
Maybe car service from the airport. Sometimes they show up that too. If you want to book a car from the airport.
Rentals, car rentals,
Yeah,
agencies.
yeah.
You'll see that as well. Okay, someone else trying to speak. Hello. Yeah. So, any other thoughts? Okay. All right. So yes. So we do see the list of hotels. We do see the car rentals in the destination city, right? Did we ask for those details? Why the system is showing those details? So that's an extended behavior. Extended behavior. So who has defined it? Like whoever developing that system has defined it, and accordingly the developer has developed it. Accordingly, like we are seeing those things on the screen. So if you have to put it in a like a use case diagram, you see that with an extend notation, where your source is flight ticket booking or flight booking, your use case is flight booking, so which extend the service to the hotel bookings or car rentals. Flight ticket booking or flight bookings extend the hotel bookings as extended things to the flight ticket booking. So that's how we should be reading it. Specifies that the target use case extends the behavior of the source. Hotel bookings are the extension to the flight ticket booking. So that is when we use the extend notation. That is when we use the extend notation. Extend or include, the notation is the same. Only thing is the text that is on top, the text is different. The text that is mentioned on top, the text is different. Okay, is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So moving on to the example here. Sorry. Any questions? Right. So when you look at the example here, this is with regards to the banking ATM machine. So if you see the actors here, the bank customer and the maintenance person, and you have the bank system on the other side. As I mentioned, actor can be a human being, actor can be any other system as well. So this is the bank system. So when you talk about the bank customer, they would be using the system for withdrawing the cash, transferring of the funds, and depositing of the funds. I'd be using the system for withdrawal of the cash, transfer of the funds, and deposit of the funds. On the other side, you have the bank system, which gets updated for every transaction that you do. You withdraw the cash from the ATM, your bank system gets updated. You transfer the funds, your bank system gets updated. You deposit the funds, your bank system gets updated. And the maintenance person is going to use the system for refilling the machine. So this is a simple example of a use case. So use case, these are the purposes for which the user, the bank customer, would be using the ATM machine. This is also another purpose. This is another purpose. Okay. So if you identify these purposes, you should be able to identify the actors. You should be able to create the use case diagram. Now looking at the other example with include and extend notation. So this is with regards to the hospital system. So with regards to the hospital system, where the receptionist would be using that system, for what all purposes, the receptionist would be using the system for patient registration, patient hospital admissions, filing of the insurance forms and claims, for medical report generation, file medical reports, and scheduling the patient hospital admissions in future, scheduling of the future appointments. For all these purposes, the hospital receptionist would be using the system. Now, if you look at the patient hospital admission, that means that like when there is a record with regards to patient hospital admission, that means that so it already includes the patient registration. It includes the patient registration. Patient hospital admission includes patient registration. And the patient registration extends the services to future appointment, future admissions. Once the patient is registered, so it can extend the services to the future appointments or future admissions. Like I can schedule future appointment for the admission as well as for the OP OP checkup, outpatient checkup. I can schedule an appointment. So that way, if you look at this particular system, so this is how we can have a use case diagram. Is that clear? Any questions with regard to the use case diagram?
No.
Okay. So that's about the use case diagram. So in the next session, we are going to talk about other use case, other diagrams, that is UML diagrams like activity diagram, class diagram, and the sequence diagram. Activity, class diagram, and the sequence diagram. We'll talk about that in the next session. So another thing that I would be discussing is like we'll be looking at the sample use case for one of the purposes that the other day we looked at it, like from the project manager perspective. We look at a sample use case, and based on that, I would be expecting you to write down the requirements for other users along with the project manager. So anyway, so that I will show you in the next session. So I'll show you the sample use case, and you can accordingly work on the subsequent things. With that, I'm going to stop here for today. Any questions before I wind up the session?
There will be no class on Saturday, Sunday.
No, there will be no class.
Thank you.
When can we expect the we got like 10 recordings or so. When can we expect the rest of the recordings, like after the completion of training period, or like
So like I will check how many sessions are over so far, and accordingly I will check with them. But in general, you should be getting the recordings as soon as you are done with the training sessions. Okay.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
if at all if there is anything that is missing, and I'll check with them. I'll let them know about it. Okay.
May I know when is the last day of training?
Not exactly I can give you, but maybe we have one more week of sessions, one more week in the sense, not 5 days at least. It will be somewhere around 7 to 8 sessions we may be having. Another 7 to 8 sessions we may be having for the
Okay.
course completion.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And one last question, Kiran. Last question.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
on the last day of the session, will you give us some exercises like to do homeworks and like use cases, use diagrams, user stories, how to write and all?
There is no point giving on the last day, but in between itself, so I can give you the use case, the exercises, so that you can get the hands-on exercise, so that I can review it as well. So that's one thing that I will do. So in between itself, I would be giving the exercise. You can work
And
on it and
yeah,
come back.
and how if in between if you are getting any questions and all after the training period also, how to contact
You
you?
can,
Like
yeah, you can get back to the coordinators. They will get in touch with me. So as needed, if in case there is one session or probably one discussion kind of thing, question and answer session is required, they will set up a meeting. Don't worry about
okay,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
They will
Thank
be
you,
anyway
thank you.
marketing your stuff, right? So obviously they will
Yeah,
take care of the things. In case if there are anything that you are stuck and you need a session, they will schedule the one Q&A session. So that will be quite possible
okay.
as needed.
Thank you, Kiran. Yeah, thank you so
Okay.
much. Yeah.
All
Okay,
right.
Kiran, I just have one question, just a quick question. So this is regarding the burn down chart. So are you going to cover that thing?
See, I will cover Jira. As part of Jira, I'll show you the burn down charts, but burn down chart creation as such is not our responsibility. But I'll
Okay,
just show you how the burn down chart look like. And more important part would be knowing about the Jira tool. So you should be able
okay,
to use that Jira tool. So I'll show you the tool. That's the important
okay,
part. Okay.
okay.
All right. Thank you so much, and see you on Monday. Have a nice weekend. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Same to you. Thank you.